Howdy. From Texas. It's kind of like an obligatory salute. Okay, also it gets people's attention in the Midwest because nobody says that here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I saw that. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Hopefully, as you already know, Dr. Green's speech today is part of the Martin Luther King Jr. Diversity Awareness Week, hosted through the College of Agriculture and several collaborative departments. Just in case you haven't seen this beautiful poster, there should be some more outside, or Myron will have some. So just so people keep in mind, tomorrow we'll be having emotional intelligence workshops 4 different times throughout the day. We still have several spaces open in case you're interested in signing up. You can just go to purdue.ag/MLK workshop. And if you forget that, of course, like I said, that there's lots of extra posters for people to take with them. And that's with Mr. David Lewis of the Lewis Consulting Group. My name is Sky Kantala, and I'm the program coordinator of a statewide violence prevention program through the College of Agriculture, and I am very honored to get to introduce Dr. Green today. So, Dr. Green is a shape-shifting black queer nerd boy, an Afro-future freedom-dreaming, rhyme-slinging dragon slayer in search of a new world. Isn't that like the most amazing bio intro ever? A scholar, poet, and filmmaker, Dr. Green earned his PhD from the Department of American Studies and Ethnicity with specializations in gender studies and visual anthropology at the University of Southern California. He joined the faculty of feminist studies at UC Santa Barbara as an assistant professor of queer theory in fall 2016. Dr. Green is published in numerous scholarly journals, including GLQ, South Atlantic Quarterly, Black Camera, and TSQ Transgender Studies Quarterly. He's currently at work editing, along with C. Riley Snorton and Treva Ellison, a special issue of TSQ on Black studies, trans studies, and as a sole editor, a book collection entitled Black Trans Love is Black Wealth. He's a proud member of BYP 100, which is the Black Youth Project, where he sits on the Healing and Safety Council. Please welcome Dr. Kai Green.
I want to, at this moment, acknowledge all of the people who are not with us in this space, who would like to be here, those of us who might be incarcerated, those of us who can't get here because of ability issues, those of us who can't get here because of different financial reasons. I just want to acknowledge that this space is a privileged space, right? All of us to be here together. I want to take a moment to just be silent for a second and think about all of those images that we saw and all of the sort of historical weight of the nasty sort of violence and genocide that we have had to carry in our bodies and in our histories and in our hearts and collectively here together. Final utterances, last lines. February 4th, 1999. Mom, I want to go to college. Amadou Diallo, 22 years old. November 26th, 2006. I love you too. Sean Bell, 23 years old. May 16th, 2010. Unknown. Ayanna Stanley Jones, 7 years old. February 26th, 2012. Ah! Trayvon Martin, 17 years old. June 14th, 2012. I don't want to die. Chantel Davis, 23 years old. November 2nd, 2013. I want to go home. I want to go home. Renisha McBride, 19. July 17th, 2014. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Eric Garner, 43 years old. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. Michael Brown, 18 years old. November 22nd, 2014. Unknown. Tamir Rice, 12 years old. April 19th, 2015. Unknown. Freddie Gray, 25 years old. In performance theorist and ethnographer Dwight Conquergood's 2002 essay, Lethal Theater, Performance, Punishment, and the Death Penalty, he provides a history of capital punishment in the US, articulating executions as rituals of human sacrifice through which the state dramatizes its absolute power and monopoly on violence. For Conquergood, there are interlocking rituals of criminal punishment: arrest, detention, interrogation, trial, conviction, incarceration, execution, and these are performed. This is a way for the state to manifest for its people justice being done. Justice is a stage, and there are multiple conflicting, competing scripts or ideas about the best way to act this out. Justice being done. Today, we have come to know the slogan, #Black Lives Matter, as it sets the stage for a different kind of justice, one that is not and cannot be dependent upon the state, precisely because it is the state that continues to reiterate that certain people, those citizens, are not always eligible for or protected by this category, citizen. A citizen has certain rights, a basic one being the right to breathe. We might also add clean drinking water, which we see as a continued struggle, right? In Flint, in North Dakota. So I opened by speaking the names of Black people who have been given leading roles in the current US landscape of lethal theater, where it is predicted that police officers, security guards, or self-appointed vigilantes extrajudicially kill at least one Black person every 28 hours. These stories fill Twitter feeds, Facebook feeds, #JusticeFor, fill in the blank. Who got shot, choked, strangled, tased, thrown in the back of a truck this week? We know this story. We know this scroll, names of Black persons committed to collective memory because they were murdered by vigilantes or police officers. Their deaths, according to the state, were indeed manifestations of acts of justice being done. A necessary dismantling of the monster, Black, with crazy eyes, giving otherworldly looks that apparently provoke the whip. There is no place in this world for these monsters. They reside in what theorist Sharon Holland might call the nation's imaginary space of death. But it is not just imaginary. We have this scroll of names, incomplete and constantly growing, because premature death is a fact of Blackness. We know that a death scroll like this marks a life taken, last breaths, final utterances. Conquergood writes, "The last dying words of the condemned gathered compelling presences of power, precisely because they were uttered from a space of death and disappearance that impressed on the audience the urgency of their vanishing." Conquergood is writing about capital punishment, state-sanctioned executions, but what I am talking about today is a pattern of violence exerted upon Black bodies' execution style. In many instances, this theater, for some, is an act of justice or putting Black people in their proper place. The condemned in this scenario do not easily compel popular sympathy or empathy. Their final words are often blotted out during the tug of war to make their lives symbolically matter. So he becomes the college-bound scholar athlete or the gang-banging thug, fulfilling some other prophecy. What is the significance of these final words then? When the space of death is a precarious one, but also a commonplace. The ritual of calling out these names is an acknowledgement of human life, but that life, these Black lives, only become matter, a matter of public record, a cause for collective mourning, memory, and protest because of death. We are not to remember so vividly the details of the lives these people lived. The fact of Blackness remains most apparent through a theater, a lethal theater indeed, well rehearsed over generations. Blackness and its proximity to premature death. What does it look like to maneuver one's Black self in an anti-Black world? What does it mean to love one's black self in an anti-black world? What are the motions and emotions that we have inherited? What lines have we rehearsed so many times that it now seems natural? Natural to bow, natural to bend, natural to rise up again after being forced to cower. Take a trip with me back, not too far back, just through the scrolls of my Facebook feed. Take a trip with me back into the being of blackness here on this land. Scrolling through Facebook memories of South Central LA. Facebook status 1. To the cop who pulled me over last night. He said my tail light was out. It wasn't. I checked. But there is no poem I could write that would save a black boy's life. There are no words you would hear to let you know that I am approaching fear, reaching for my papers, not a gun. Don't pull, don't move too fast. I love my life. I love myself. But there is no poem I could write that would save a black boy's life, my very own life. And I can't see with all those white lights. And you tell me to roll all the windows down, turn the car off. And there is an officer to the right, and it's just too much light for me to see. No, I didn't steal this car. No, I have never been arrested. No warrants. No. I'm a good black man. And I hate myself for thinking that politics of respectability and my bow tie, or the way I ask permission before making any sudden movements, might be the very thing to save my life. No, I've never been to jail, but my daddy has, and my cousins have. So it really doesn't matter what you think of me, because I know what you thought of them, guilty, historically. And there is no poem that can make innocent the black boy's skin. So I play my music loud, louder. So loud till it makes your ears bleed. So loud it cracks ankles and bends knees. So loud. And if there is no poem, then here is my flesh. Here are my screams. Feel my body against yours. I push back. The poem was a warning, and it's not my fault you never learned how to read. And after that encounter, I was afraid to drive. But I had to pick up my partner from work. She got in the passenger seat. I asked her to drive. She was more feminine, of a lighter skin complexion. I thought we would be safer that way. I understood then the complex histories of relationships forged between black men and black women who simply were trying to figure out how to survive a system that sought to obliterate them. The compromises made, the sharp tongues that were held to preserve black life. I also understand the scream, the moment when tongues become untied and black rage is unleashed. Facebook status 2. Smoke break with TC outside. Cops drive up. I think about running. I don't know why. Brown man turns the corner, walking faster, now running. Cop gets off bike, cop chasing. Brown man running behind me and TC. We are shields. I think about running. Cop pulls out gun. I think about running. Another man in car pulls out the camera phone. Are you going to shoot? Cop says, stop running. Why are you running? Brown man can't stop trying to get away. Cop puts gun away, tells the man to get on the ground. He won't. He can't run anymore. Cop holds man up against wall. Why were you running? Brown man, I don't know. I too thought about running. Brown man still won't get on the ground. More cops come. Cop car collision. Doesn't matter. 12 cops make a man get on the ground. Why are you running? I too thought about running. Hashtag LAPD. Hashtag trauma. Hashtag wow. Feeling overwhelmed. The LAPD ended up letting the man go, but I am still holding on to the image. I had never seen a gun pointed in my direction. I froze. It didn't seem real that that metal object in that man's hand could so easily take away my life or another's. Facebook status 3. So what would you do? Situation. Left my wallet in the car. I had to go back and get it out of the parking garage. Middle-aged black woman walks in just before me. We enter the stairwell together. I'm behind her. I feel her discomfort, so I say, hello, thinking that might help. She grabs her bag tighter. We happen to be parked on the same floor. Hashtag being a black man. Hashtag being a man. Hashtag being a black woman. Hashtag being a woman. Hashtag safety. Hashtag patriarchy. Hashtag racism. Hashtag I look suspicious. How can it be undone? Feeling perplexed. Truth is, I might have been afraid of me too. Truth is, I have internalized racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia. I have been afraid of my own reflection before. Truth is, I oftentimes believe that the fact of my educational background or bow tie might protect me from the fact of blackness, but that's a farce. Every day I feel black, and that is a complicated way of feeling. See W.E.B. Du Bois's Souls of Black Folk, or Toni Cade Bambara's The Black Woman, or Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Mask, or Joseph Beam's In the Life, or any narrative of black life, whether it be a letter, journal entry, tweet, or Facebook status. Du Bois described a second sight that black people had been gifted with. It wasn't hindsight or foresight. Rather, it was the ability to see and understand right now the multi-dimensional and interlocking structures of power that reproduce a common sense logic of whiteness as forever angelic and redeemable. This logic of whiteness is secured through a simultaneous reproduction of a common sense logic of blackness as forever devalued and always guilty. When I asked my partner to drive that night because she was lighter skinned and feminine, I asked her to protect me. When she walked outside my house, she was often assaulted by an onslaught of street harassment by black men. Once she was even followed. Because of this, we tried to make sure that she never had to walk alone. I walked with her, and my black masculine presence shielded her from a nasty misogyny. The way we use our bodies to protect each other is survival, but it is not sustainable. We have to figure out how to keep ourselves alive for now, but the struggle is not just that. The goal is to bring about a new world order where Black History Month is lived every day through the work of ending anti-black racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, homophobia, sexism, transphobia. These oppressions are all linked, and we cannot do away with one without doing away with the other. We cannot lose our second sight abilities. In fact, we should attempt to further develop this into a multivalent sight. And when Du Bois is talking here about this second sight, he says black folks are gifted with this second sight, but black people aren't the only people who have the ability to have that kind of sight. It is the work of everyone to try to develop that sight, okay? So what we are up against is a master narrative of white benevolence and black criminality. This master narrative is deeply entrenched in the world we traverse today. Our task is not simply to undo what has been done, but we must also create new worlds, new possibilities. Policies like stop and frisk, policies like stand your ground laws are inherently racist, grounded in fear of the black criminal, an image that has remained constant in white supremacist imaginaries. These policies are based in logics of policing that rely on the normalization of blackness as embodied criminality. The criminality or policing tactics used to put these criminalized populations in their place may differ when examining race alongside gender, sexuality, class, and ability. For example, a black woman's experience of state policing might be different from a black man's experience. However, a black woman who is also genderqueer might experience identical policing from the state because she might fit the description of a young black man. As long as there is a category of black male and criminality is normalized as essential to that definition, there will be all kinds of bodies: black, brown, poor, middle class, transgender, cisgender, female, male. All of these different kinds of bodies are subject to racist state-sanctioned violence under the guise of safety, law, or standard policy. As long as there is a ruling ideology that blackness is inherently criminal, we will always be fighting to plead the cause of black humanity. I am a human being. As Sylvia Winters writes, the codes who govern who gets to be considered human also govern the locking in of captive populations in ghettos and prisons. Today, more than any other day, just 2 days before the inauguration of Donald Trump, a man whose cabinet members have a combined wealth of $11 billion, we must not only rethink our governing codes and our laws, we have to change them and change them for the better. They do not work, and we are right to point out the contradictions, the gross contradictions of US empire and capitalism. A world where this is just mind-boggling to me, the 8 richest men control as much wealth as the poorest half of all of humanity. That is 8 people, 6 of whom are US Americans, right? They have the same amount of wealth, 8 people, the same amount of wealth as 3.6 billion people. How does that happen? This is maddening. So one would be right in naming this wrong, but historically we have had to do a lot of pushing to ask for basic freedoms. The desire to be considered human alone was never guaranteed for those of my ancestors who were brought here as property, things like that chair you sit in, objects. Blackness is, and it must be understood as the signifier of a great capacity for radical and often criminal improvisation. For example, in 1851, they called the insatiable desire for freedom that enslaved black folks had drapetomania. Drapetomania was deemed a mental illness by physician Samuel Cartwright. It was a condition that described a slave obsessed with his or her freedom. The runaways, the ancestors who refused to remain silent and still despite the risk. The recommended prescription, for those ailed by drapetomania was more whippings. If slaves were still too stubborn after the beatings, the suggestion was amputation of both big toes or sometimes a foot. The goal was to remove the possibility of escape while still keeping the slave alive and working in the service of the master. But blackness is resilient. It survives and has survived crossings, tumultuous waters. You are not human, cramped, packed on top of one another, so close that you really shouldn't be able to breathe with all that was carried, not just bodies, but body secretions, sweat, dripping, piss, ass, gas, hot breath, screaming, blood, crying, so close. You really shouldn't be able to laugh, but I imagine they did. You really shouldn't be able to make a sound, but they did, so close in the hold of the ship. You really shouldn't be able to dream, but they did. Dreams of breathing sweet air, and we still must keep dreaming because the air in 2017 is still heavy, still stank, polluted by machines and capitalism's investments, always reminding us, I must love myself or die trying. Blackness is embodied. Black people bear the trace of resiliency and love in spite of. I remember the first time a white boy called me out of my name, shit colored. That's what he thought of me. In art class, I was drawing abstract shapes, using all kinds of colors, becoming all kinds of things, but he needed to remind me that my blackness was to him shit. I hated that his punishment was that he had to call me and apologize. I had to listen and hold his supposed remorse. I didn't want to talk, but I had to forgive and accept his ignorance was not his fault. I remember that same year, the teacher lining up the students in 8th grade, lightest to darkest. There were only 2 black kids in the class. They stood next to each other, knowing their position, light skin and then dark. While everyone moved around trying to figure out what slight difference they could see, only the black kids knew where to place themselves on the line, on the darkest end. Embodying black means knowing your place in other people's imaginations. Knowing that it is not just white people that will pick you last, but other black folk, people of color, because we have all been taught that we are somehow broken, as if we just ain't right. Instead of accepting that and loving and cherishing that our bodies positioned in the anti-black imaginaries are critiques of Western civilization, the way we do things, and we do things all kinds of ways, the way we do things to challenge the way things are supposed to be done, we are punished for that. Cece McDonald, Sakia Gunn, Monica Jones, the living surrounding the dead so close and intimate is black life and death. Blackness is a place, the place you don't want to go alone. It is the hood. It is where crackheads walk. It is where pimps hustle, where people work at night. It is where kids play and make basketball hoops out of recycling bins placed on the back of your mama's car trunk. It is the ability to use street cleaning signs as a hoop too, when you need to dunk. It is taking the bricks that you find on the side of the house and a piece of wood and making a ramp to jump over. It is innovation. It is turning the garbage can over just after the garbage has been collected and making a drum out of it. It is cartwheels, pop locking and beatboxing, making rhymes. It is singing. It is kids singing and kissing and playing tag and catch and laughing and asking for just 10 more minutes, even though the street lights already came on. It is the kitchen full with the scent of hair burning, the cold of the floor against my thigh, the piece of the thigh that falls off the pillow as I sit in between my mother's legs, electric burner glowing orange, hot comb catching and holding heat. Blackness is mother parting each section slowly, moving comb from root to edges. It is magic. It is straight now, but in about 3 hours, it will all be sweat out. Blackness is supple for shape shifting. Blackness is a way of seeing, knowing, smelling, moving. The thing that makes us difficult to understand is that there are just so many types of blacknesses. I remember when I learned my particular kind, what we'd come to know and call ourselves in college, plain blacks. Blacks who, when asked, where are you from? Claim local cities like Oakland, Detroit, Brooklyn. Those of us who, when pressed for more, no, but where are your people from? And respond, Texas, Mississippi, New Orleans, somewhere in the South. And when pressed more, realize that there is no record beyond that. But we keep it moving. Blackness is the greatest experimental poem. Blackness could be just about anything if... Got a little more time? All right, I'm going to conclude. And I want to conclude by asking us to think about what I think is the most important tool that black feminists try to impart upon us, and that is an ethic or a politic of radical love. The house that we have been born into here in the US is a capitalist one that is held together through these controlling binaries. Rich and poor, male, female, winners and losers. Every freedom here requires an unfreedom somewhere else. It does not allow us to transform the hold of the binary. It only allows us to imagine moving positions within it. Psychoanalyst Frantz Fanon helps to make this clear when he talks about the desire of colonized and oppressed people for equality. He critiques the colonized subject for striving for the promised land which is also called equality in the liberal sense. Now, what does it mean to ask for equality without asking equal to whom? Fanon asserts that the black subject who searches for equality is not asking to enjoy the rights of a human, but rather the rights of a white man. Fanon points out that this move towards equality for the black subject simply reinforces hegemony by urging inferior peoples to look toward those in power for definitions of humanity. And this is where I think Audre Lorde echoes Fanon when she writes, "The master's tools will not dismantle the master's house." So perhaps we should stop focusing all of our energies on dismantling the master's house and instead put some energy into creating a communal home where love is the center. If routed through a Black feminist genealogy, we discover self-love, an essential component to Black feminist praxis. A Black feminist genealogy rescues self-love from pathology as it is presented in many standard psychoanalytic formulations. Self-love, like Black love, is articulated as an act. It is not something that simply takes over you. Self-love becomes a politic of self-care with recognition and realization that the self is always in relationship with other people and systems of power. Black feminist praxis and theorizations attempt to rescue Black women from notions of inferiority and pathology by prioritizing the needs of Black women, not in exclusion. Rather, Black feminist formulations do not view the other as foreign, demonized other, but rather a holistic we that attempts to describe the self and all around the self that helps to constitute it as such. So when June Jordan addressed the 1978 National Black Writers Conference at Howard University, she proclaimed, "If I am a Black feminist serious in the undertaking of self-love, then it seems to me that the morally defensible character of that self-love should be that I gain and gain and gain in the socio-psychic strength needed so that I may, without fear, be able and willing to love and respect women, for example, who are not like me, women who are not feminist, women who are not professionals, women who are not as old or as young as I am, women who have neither job nor income, women who are not Black." Jordan's demand for self-love is tied to her ability and capacity to love others who are not like her. The kind of political vision laid out here often gets lost when Black feminism is relegated to identity politics. A limited understanding of identity politics at that. For it is an identity politics that assumes the subject-centered can only provide information for that particular group, rather than knowledge that is useful for everyone. Jordan argues here for the right to love herself and Black women like herself, but it is in the ability to holistically engage in the self-loving practices that allows her to gain the skills to love others. Locating self-affirming space as a Black woman is a struggle, much like the plight of the Black slave in 1851. To proclaim and act on Black love is a violation. Jordan speaks to this contradiction. I cannot be expected to respect what someone else calls self-love if that concept of self-love requires my suicide to any degree. If your self-love or self-interest requires that I be a slave and accept that as my lot in life, then I cannot accept your concept of self-love. There have been many colonized and subjugated peoples who have been forced to reject popular notions of self-love because they center and uphold Western heteronormative ideologies and epistemologies. If these ideals are accepted and internalized, it would also require the subject who is not those things to suppress and or despise their difference. That is the opposite approach that Jordan is arguing for. She argues again for a holistic account that is not based on the subjugation of the other. Jordan evokes what I have in another essay called A Radical We, a possible geographical shift of the self, a process that requires an undoing of some of what we have come to know as essential to identity formation of race and gender. It implies a restructuring of the self that no doubt requires a restructuring of the collective, a reorientation to subjectivity that is less about an individual I and more about the work of the individual as they or them, or possibly a radical we. The radical we compels a self-love that is not just good for the self, but rather it is generative and good for others as well. If self-love does harm, then it must be evaluated because it is probably a symptom of unwellness. In the case of Jordan and the black slave attempting to escape, both name a system of power that disallows affirmation of self-love for certain kinds of bodies. It is safe to say that when self-love is thought to be criminal, it is probably a symptom of an unwell structure of power. When this is the case, it requires bold courage, not only to affirm one's right to self-love, but to also affirm self-love as a holistic practice that does not require harm or enslavement of others. Yesterday, last Facebook status, if this comes back on, well, we'll get that back on. But yesterday, I changed my Facebook status, and it was simply marked unsafe. It is a part of a Black Lives Matter project. I encourage you all to also check in, whether you are black or not. We are all necessary for now. So I want to close by reminding us of the famous words by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And those are, none of us are free until we are all free. We're all in this thing together. So thank you for allowing me to be here. And I encourage you to check this out on Facebook. That's it. Thank you.
We have just a little bit more time if people want to do Q&A, and I just wanted to help people notice or remind you, if you've never been in this room, there's actually little speakers right here at everybody's tables, and I think you just kind of press on the center part and it'll light up so you can speak into it so people can hear all the questions. Thanks.
So, you all want to have a conversation or no?
Recovering from the brilliance of your presentation.
Thank you. What did you feel? What were the things that you felt in your body?
The gross injustice through all these years, basically. The anger.
Anger.
Can you push the button? Oh, we're recording this, so we want to get that.
This is such a tech-savvy place.
I felt the gross injustice through the ages and anger that people are so closed to anything different, any thought that's different, any experience that's different.
And so when you feel that rage, where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your shoulders? Do you feel
In
it
my stomach.
In your stomach, in your core? Interesting.
Yeah, it makes my stomach hurt.
Any questions, comments, please?
Earlier you spoke about how Black people are gifted with this sight of viewing things differently. And I'm wondering, how do you cultivate that in someone who is not of the same ethnic background?
Mm-hmm. How do you cultivate? So I talked about what Du Bois refers to as a second sight, right? Which I think he talks about it as a gift. It's not a negative thing, right? And basically what he's pointing to is, what does it mean to know the experience of being, on the one hand, a human, and on the other hand, an object? What does it mean to know that life of being a person who people don't recognize as human, right? And so how do you get others to understand that or have that sight? It takes a lot of work. It takes empathy. It's a key word. It's a key word because empathy is the ability to understand where someone else is coming from. Now, in order to understand where someone else is coming from, it doesn't mean you have to be them, right? So we don't all need to go and become Black, right? But you have to understand, the way I think about Blackness is how Fred Moten would define it, and he says that Black people have a privileged relationship to Blackness. And what that means is, when you see me, there is no doubt in your mind that you are going to read me as Black. I could tell you I'm all kinds of other things, and I could be all kinds of other things, but the truth of the matter is, you're going to say, oh, there's a Black man, right? And so in some ways, I have a privileged relationship to Blackness. No one will ever question that. but what I also want you to know, and what Fred Moten says, is that black people aren't the only people who experience the condition of blackness. So in my other research, I talk about darkness, right? And I say darkness is something that's embodied. Black people embody it, but also you could think of other kinds of people in other historical moments that might have embodied that sort of darkness, right? So I think about folks in the 80s who were just the first folks who were diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, and how that disease sort of manifested itself on the body, right? And so what did it mean for white men who previously felt some kind of safety in their whiteness, right, to suddenly have a closer relationship to, they were closer in proximity to premature death, right? And so in one way, we can think about blackness as one's proximity or to death, to premature death, but I also really always want to emphasize that it's not just death. It's also one's proximity to the possibility of a new way of living, right? So when I'm talking about folks being in the hold of the ship, when they're coming over in the Middle Passage, being forced as slaves to come over here, can you imagine what it meant to be lined up, right? And to still have ideas, to still be having poetry in your head, to still have songs, to still sing under such conditions. That is only a miracle. So that idea of being a human under those conditions, like I am hoping to God that I don't ever have to experience that. You know, we will see on the 20th what happens. You know, one thing I've heard is that when people tell you about themselves and what they're going to do, believe them. And so we've been told a lot of things. So we need to really understand how we're going to come together and build a strategy collectively. So yes, I'll leave it at that.
What do you see as the way forward? I mean, sort of politically, do you think that incremental change is possible, working within the system is possible to achieve justice? I mean, when I look at the police and when I look at everything that we're about to experience, I mean, is there a way forward incrementally?
There is a way forward, because every day certain people get up and we move forward, right? And so I believe that, one, this is a question that we have to ask as a collective, but two, I believe that everyone is necessary. So when I say that, I'm not just saying like black folks and white folks and brown folks and Asian folks. I'm saying that in your particular position, wherever you are, you have some work to do. Now, it might not be the work that dismantles the whole structure, right? But the work that you do is important, and you want to be in alignment with a sort of, with this possibility of a new world. Me, personally, I'm an abolitionist. That means that I would like to see that we don't have prisons, because I don't think that that's a great way to, I have never seen anybody come out of prison and be better. So to me, there's something else that we need to create. Now, a lot of times when people talk about abolition, they just want to tear things down. Tear it down, destroy, down with the system, right? But I'm not so quick to do that if we don't understand the work it takes to put something else in its place. So abolition, when people talk about abolition, we always have to think about, okay, we want something to end, but we can't just think about ending. We have to also think, what do we want to create? How are we going to create it? And often what you see, and this is what I see as an organizer, is that as we're trying to create other systems, right? So I'm on the Healing and Safety Council of BYP 100, which is basically our holistic HR team. So when something goes wrong in our organization, we have a council where folks sort of come up with a process, like somebody has harmed someone else in community, and we don't want to reproduce what the state has done to us as black people. So what does that look like? You all would be surprised as to the times we come up against, I don't know. We don't know. What does it look like to not have revenge after someone's harmed you, and to think about a different way of moving forward? What does accountability look like?
Yes, I just kind of wanted to piggyback on the first question or comment that was made regarding the documentary that you shared with us at the very beginning, Living in Black America as a Black mother with 2 Black sons. I wake up with that sick feeling every morning, and I go to bed every night with that sick feeling in my stomach, which many of us maybe experienced during this few minutes that we had together. But from the time that both of my sons were born, I wake up with that fear of neither one of them or both of them or one of them not making it home. And I live with that fear every day, and even more so now. So I just wanted to share that, with that sick feeling and that feeling of hopelessness doesn't go away, but it impacts your life every day. And so I pray, that's my prayer every day, that God protects my sons throughout this day. And I have to pray that every day. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
That is something that many of us as Black mothers and fathers live with every day.
Thank you.
So for fear of following that, my question to you and to the larger group would be, because this is a Martin Luther King Jr., this is an activity as part of the celebration of his life. My question to the larger community would be, is it possible to have nonviolent change this day and age, the way that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have imagined? Is it possible?
Well, one thing I will say is that if we look at sort of the history of the Black radical tradition and the history of Black folks organizing, and I mean this not just in the US, I mean all over the world, you will understand that Black people haven't historically been violent. Like, that's not something, when you think of who is sort of the people who are really interested in war, the people that are interested in colonialism, and that's kind of a broad stroke, so it's not really fair historically. But I will say that, let's see, I wanna answer this with something someone said to me, and it was a very good example. I never thought about it this way. So a Black person was talking to a friend, and they said something to them to the effect of, well, if Black people would just educate themselves and you know, pull their pants up and do all of these things, then, you know, they could integrate life and assimilate like everyone else. And I just don't understand why you're so angry all the time. And so this person said, I want you to really consider what it means to be a Black person in the US and to have ancestors who were stolen, literally taken here, and forced to work, and then told they were free, and told to, you know, just work like everybody else, and you're in the same place, right? And so what does it mean for every day for this mother to wake up and pray over her sons? This is how many years post that voyage, right? So the afterlife of slavery, the afterlife of certain kind of violences are still with us, right? And so for us to be here in this room, we are enacting a certain kind of forgiveness, right? To even be in relationship in this moment. I mean, if I took a whole group of people, stole them, forced them to work, whipped them, cut their feet off, raped them, and then said, we're gonna be all in community together, you would say, wait a second, I think we need to have a conversation because a lot just happened. A lot just happened between us. How do you expect us to move on and we can't even name the harm that was done? And I think what happens a lot of times is that white folks say, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. And it's true, you didn't do it. But you, like me, bear the legacy of a history. And it's not your fault. It's not my fault either. But we need to contend with it in a way that we haven't, that we have refused to, right? We have just simply refuse to acknowledge this harm of the Middle Passage. And it's going to continue to haunt us until we really do.
Well, I just wanted to say that nonviolence can happen and there can be change, but we don't ever talk about the civil rights movement was not just Dr. King, but it's the one who we talk about. So Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton was like, they were all in there. And so there were other things that came with the civil rights movement that were nonviolent. And so I don't think we want to name them because, Black Panthers, they were terrorists, but let's be honest, Black Panthers fed Black children, they educated Black children, they did all these things. And I think that sometimes we get stuck on MLK as the only way to an end and the only means to an end. And I just want to talk about it holistically.
Absolutely. I thank you for that. And I just want to say that if we think of nonviolence in terms of the way that King and folks were thinking of it, nonviolence was a strategy, right? And the strategy was we want people to see how nasty it is to be a Black person here. We want people to see those images all over the world because the U.S., who claims to be like the place where freedom takes place, is built on the biggest contradiction. The only way this place could exist is with genocide of Native Americans, enslavement of Black folks, right? So how can that be freedom? How can we? And I think what it is it's really hard to get to the root of it. I mean, it's hard to say, let's grapple with it. Because what we're going to have to do is sit with some uncomfortable feelings. We're going to have to sit with the fact that some Black people are going to be upset and they don't want to talk to white people. You have to be okay with that and say, you know what? That's fair. Let me give you your space, right? Not everybody's going to be able to be here together in the same way because we have all experienced a really traumatic historical event. Multiple traumatic historical events, right? And we're continuing that process. And so my fear is like, how do we collectively come together and say, okay, it might take like small little groups of people working, saying, okay, we're gonna really do this and we're gonna continue to build, we're gonna continue to build out. And everybody can't work in the same way. Everybody, some people, like for instance, some people will be professors. Some people are gonna be organizers. Some people are going to be writers. Some people are going to do multiple things, but we need it all because what I say is that everybody has come to this earth with a certain kind of medicine, right? You have all come here with some kind of gift to share with us all. We all need that gift. Now I have a particular kind of medicine. Everybody has a different prescription. Everybody has a different ailment. Now I might come here and say, look, I got this medicine for you. You say, well, I don't need that prescription. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not the right medicine for you, but that medicine really works for this person. But if we are all able to cultivate and figure out what it is the medicine is that we have to give and sort of share that, I think we'll be in a better place. I think sometimes what happens is people say, well, in order to really have change, we have to destroy the system. In order to have change, you have to be on the street. In order to have change, you need to write articles. In order to have change, and everybody has their own particular idea of what change is, and it's like, that's great, we do. We need that, we need that, we need that. We need you to figure out what's your skill, what you do best, and go for it. And we need to support that. Everybody doesn't need to do everything. And I think sometimes some people, like, let's name it, are jealous because they're like, oh man, that person is the performer. They're always out there and you're the strategist. You're behind the scenes. But we need everybody, right?
So in Lafayette, there is a diversity roundtable, which out of that has come conversation circles, where the idea is to get people from varying backgrounds to get together and talk about these issues. But the same, usually white people show up and talk to each other because we can't seem to bring in people with different points of view, which would include not only blackness, but very conservative, exclusive political differences. Do you have any suggestions for how to reach into our community and find the people where we really could have real conversations?
Ask people what they need. Ask the people that you would like to be in your group. Ask them how you can help them. Is there anything that they need? That's one of the best ways, because often we're like, I want you to come to my conversation and help, and people are like, well, I don't have time for a conversation. That's just not what I need in my life right now. But what I could do is we could have some conversation if you come and help me clean my house or help me do this. You have to figure out how to engage with certain people, right? And so this is another way of thinking about that second sight, right? It's not always, your approach just might not be the best approach. And often we have our ideas about like what's necessary, right? So you ever have like the greatest idea, you plan something and then nobody shows up? It's probably because you didn't check in with those folks to say, hey, do y'all want this? You thought it was great. It's a great idea, and it is a great idea, but it just doesn't fit what people need. And so in order to know what people need or what people want, you have to ask them.
I wanted to ask, so since so much of your talk today is focused on, I don't know why it's blinking, sorry.
Oh, because the mic is right there.
Okay, focused on resiliency and radical self-love in the context of interpersonal, structural, historical, and intergenerational violence. Do you have examples or stories about what does that type of radical self and community love look like, especially in the context of like collective struggles?
So I'll go back again to the Healing and Safety Council, so we have two sort of branches. We have intervention and prevention, right? And so preventative folks, they get to do the fun stuff, like we call it Care Bear Days, meditation, things like that, where we are really trying to best love ourselves in certain ways, like take time to take myself on a walk, take time to figure out these things. And then the intervention is like somebody has done something, somebody has harmed someone. And so the way that this started was that one of the co-chairs of our Chicago chapter was named a person who committed sexual violence, right? And so once that came out, it was like, well, how do we respond? We are a Black queer feminist organization. We are not going to do the thing that has been done historically, which is to say, we will protect this man, right? This is our leader. Forget that woman that was harmed. We're not going to do that. So what does that look like? It looks like, okay, well, you clearly gotta lose your position of power in the organization. We're not going to throw you away because we don't believe in throwing people away. It means starting a survivor-led process, right? So the person who was harmed, we have been working with her to create a curriculum for our organization around enthusiastic consent, right? So what does it mean that enthusiastic consent is something that everybody in our organization of BYP 100 has to sort of work on, right? It also means we have these things called accountability buddies. So if someone has committed harm, you might end up working with someone one-on-one. I have worked with a lot of cisgender men who have been perpetrators of violence, right, on women. And so what does it mean to work with this person and say, this is not okay? And for that person to actually know this is not okay. And to say, I know that this is not okay, right? So we have people who bring themselves to the Healing and Safety Council and say, I did this thing and I know that it is not who I want to be. It is not who I need to be for this community. I need help. And so how do we collectively build help? So one of the things is like we have these things called masculine chats in the chapter that I was in Chicago. And that's a place where men, mostly masculine identified folks, but mostly cisgender Black men are coming together to figure out what does it mean to build emotional intelligence. So the first time we met, it was for many of the men in that room, the first time they had ever talked about emotions and feelings with other men. What does that mean? That means that some feminine person or some woman is doing all the work of holding these men because they do not know how to hold one another. So what does it mean to teach folks how to be emotionally intelligent, right? Girls, people who are raised as girls are taught, this is how you care for people. This is how you hold things. This is how you hold things. We hold. But it's hard to do all the holding, right? So how do we share that weight? And that's how we need to think about things in general. We can think about it with gender, we can think about it with race. Like, what does it mean for this person over here to say, every single day I carry this and wake up worried about my son? What does it mean to hold that alone? Some of y'all, you don't have to work, you don't have those same fears. So how would that work? Like, what does it mean to help hold that? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I'm saying these are the conversations we need to have. Instead of being like, ooh, that's tough, and then we just not gonna talk about it, right? You know, like, let's name it and not be afraid to talk about the differences. Thank you.
We have time for at least two more, about two more. Quick one back.
Do you think that the Black Lives Matter movement is addressing unresolved issues from the civil rights era, or is it a different movement entirely?
Oh, that's great. That is a great question.
The reason why I asked that is because I lived towards the end of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, so I'll repeat the question. The question was asked, do you think that the Black Lives Matter movement is continuing the work of the Black civil rights movement, or is it something completely different?
Yeah, the reason why I asked that is because when I lived towards the end of that era, there's a lot of issues I felt were not resolved.
Mhm.
You know, because I think Lyndon Johnson took us in a different direction. And I don't know if that was
Yeah.
purposely done, no.
Well, this is a fantastic question, and I love this question because I'm always thinking about it as a person I'm an interdisciplinary scholar, so I'm part historian, mostly ethnographer and talker. So one of the things, so let's first say Black Lives Matter movement, right? Movement for Black Lives is naming a whole host of organizations and groups that are all sort of under that banner. And so what gets difficult sometimes is you might have one person doing something and, you know, news media says, well, they're Black Lives Matter, but who is Black Lives Matter? So that's why when I speak specifically, often I'm saying I work with the Black Youth Project, which is a part of this larger framework of Movement for Black Lives. Now, when I'm talking about the Black Youth Project, I will say that our organization works from a Black queer feminist lens, and that is a complete, it's in direct relationship not only to the civil, like what was done in the civil rights movement, but also Black feminist movement, right? So often when we think about the 60s and then we say, well, the black power, black civil rights movement died. But actually, if you look at the 60s and in the 70s, you have Black women and women of color who are saying, you know, we need a feminist critique. We need a feminist analysis. We need to understand how gender and our notions of patriarchy and masculinity are not just harmful for women, but they're harmful for us as Black people. Because we can look at the relation between Black and white, and we can see a lot of similarities between male and female. So the way that power is working is very similar. So we need to be very careful. So what I will say to that is I think that in the Black Youth Project and BYP 100, we are very clear about not doing the same kind of harms in terms of patriarchy, in terms of a reliance on one messianic leader who's going to take us to the promised land, right? And also trying to make sure that it's not only cisgender men who are the leaders of the movement. However you might be defining it. The other thing in my other sort of like research that I really think about when I'm thinking about tracing these histories of what I would say a Black radical tradition, is that the moment that we forget, right? Somehow we go from 60s, maybe we consider the 70s a little bit, but then all of a sudden we're in 2012, 2011, and it's like, were Black people not organizing then? Were they not around? And there are a lot of things that we can think about, particularly in the 80s. I think if we look at, and this is what I write about in sort of my academic research, in the 80s, when we look at the HIV/AIDS epidemic, a lot of folks who were organizing as Black folks, as people of color, were organizing for public health issues and concerns were artists who were in that moment. We can think of Marlon Riggs, we can think of Essex Hemphill, we can think of Audre Lorde, we can think of a lot of black women and black men who are no longer with us in this moment, right? So a lot of people were taken out in that moment who were helping, I think, to build the framework that we can now articulate via BLM and BYP 100, which is one that is very, strives to be inclusive, right? Strives to be very inclusive of different kinds of genders, of different kinds of sexualities, and tries to be really mindful about class, right? And so, yeah, one great story, we had a meeting with SNCC folk, right? SNCC Legacy Project. And we wanted to ask them a question, which is, what did y'all do when there was conflict? What did you do when someone got mad at someone else? What did you do when someone did something really horrible? There was no answer. We kept trying to ask the question differently. So someone said, okay, we know that Ella Baker and King didn't like each other. How did y'all deal with that? You know, and it was a really great moment, because basically it was a moment where we, in the silence, it was like, oh, these are some of the things that weren't able to be done in that moment, right? And these are the things that we're trying to contend with now, which is, it's hard. It's hard when people that you are working and organizing with do harmful things to one another. And you're like, we have this vision of something else, but why are we, this old thing is coming into our new world. So we gotta continue to work on how we have internalized these structures of power, right? So for instance, like when I'm talking about that woman who gets afraid of me, I'm like, yeah, I have had moments like that where I can remember being afraid of of a black man coming up behind me. And so what does that mean though? I'm not afraid to name that. See, the thing about it I think is funny is that I can name it because I'm black, but a lot of white people have had that experience too, and you won't name it because you're afraid of being racist. And the thing is, it's okay to name how racism has affected you and affects the way you're able to interact with other people. Once we name it, we can sort of deal with it, right?
Okay, so we had the civil rights movement, the nonviolent philosophy of that worked. You know, desegregation came and voter rights, we got that act. And because I think the biggest reason why it worked is because America was looking bad to the world and how they treated their citizens because of the media attention throughout the world. So today we have the media attention throughout the world. Folks is marching all over the world for the Black Lives Matter. Yet it don't seem like it's working. We're still, any day, every 28th hour, as you said, there's a black body being murdered by someone in law enforcement or vigilante style. Why do you think it's not working? With all this media attention, whether it's in the 60s where it was the fire hoses and dogs or tanks and tear gas today. Why is it this media attention changing our laws now as it did back then?
Well, in some ways, I would say that people who are under the framework of BLM are often seen as radical terrorists, right? And you might see them in a similar framework to the Panthers, possibly. That's a comparison one could try to argue. And so when I talk about, when you talk about these folks who have been murdered, often you hear the descriptions of the people and why the cop had to kill them. It was because this person no longer became a person in the eyes of the other, right? They became a monster. And so this idea of like, why isn't it working? Well, it's because we refuse to see some people as people. And we have to really question, okay, I think that's why I go back to the Fanon. I think that's just such an incredible thing that he said, which is like, when you're asking for equality, you have to say equal to whom, because in doing that, you're saying that white people are the standard of humanity, right? And what would it mean to say, actually, we all need to reconceive of this concept of human and we all need to become new people. Not just give black people, right? So, right, desegregation, not just let black people into these white schools when a lot of times black people didn't want to go to these schools. They wanted to be in their neighborhoods. They wanted to be with people who looked like them and teachers that looked like them. They wanted resources. That's what they wanted. Books. That's what they wanted. So like sometimes it's like what we get lost on what the dream was, and we think it's like, I want to be equal. I want to sit where you are. I don't necessarily need to sit where you are, but I want to be able to do the things that I want to do where I am, right? So I often think about my own sort of academic history and what it meant to be sort of a kid who I see myself as like an experiment. What happens if you take a poor black kid and put him in all of these situations? And the white folks continue to like push me through these real elite institutions, right? And it was like, oh man, you're doing absolutely what we would have you to do, right? You're making us proud, right? And so it was a very hard thing to understand that the way my success to them always meant I had to be taken out of the community that I came from. I had to be taken away from my family because I was something that could be saved. But the people where I came from is not enough room for them. And that's really the logic of capitalism. We always can let a few in, but all y'all can't come up in here, right? So thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment about what was said a couple comments before about our behaviors and often being a product of racism that's persisted for a long time. I had a conversation with an international student not too long ago, a student who had never been to the United States before, came here, went to the grocery store for the first time and told me, I saw a black man at the store and I was scared. And so my comment just is, it's not just us living in this dynamic, we're projecting that to the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much. This was great.